Alright guys, so you are about to be interested to hear this. One day after making you watch the longest video in the history of Yuma High School geometry videos, I am going to make you watch the shortest video in the history of Yuma High School videos. Partly because this is pretty much follows on yesterday. It's pretty straightforward. I don't have a whole lot of new material. Everything we're doing is just going backwards from what we did yesterday, and the other reason it's going to be short is because I got a pizza in the oven and it's going to be ready in 10 minutes. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to determine whether two lines are parallel. Remember, last video, yesterday's section, we learned one postulate, three theorems. Today, we're just going backwards. We're going to learn their converses and then use them to prove that two lines are parallel. So, Pearson text 3.3. Going back to yesterday, you remember how all of those theorems, the three theorems and the one postulate, said if a line's parallel, then we know certain relationships about the angles. Well, now we're going to learn the converses, which say basically if we know something about the angles, we know the lines are going to be parallel, or the rays, or the segments, okay? So yesterday we learned a postulate, three theorems, that said if we got parallel lines, we know alternate interior, alternate exterior, and corresponding angles are congruent. And we also know that same-side interior angles are supplementary. Today, we're just taking their converses and working them backwards. So here are the four. The converse of the same-side interior angles postulate is that if two lines in a transversal form same-side interior angles that are supplementary, add up to 180, then the two lines must be parallel. So if 3 and 5 add up to 180, or if 4 and 6 add up to 180, then the two lines have to be parallel. Second one, converse of the alternate interior angles theorem. If alternate interior angles are formed out of two lines in a transversal, and those alternate interior angles are congruent, then the two lines must be parallel. Again, yesterday, remember we learned if two lines are parallel, alternate interior angles must be congruent. So today, converse. If two lines in a transversal form alternate, just smashed a bug. If two lines in a transversal form alternate interior angles that are congruent, then the two lines must be parallel. So if 3 and 6, alternate interiors, or 4 and 5, if either of those are ending up being congruent, L and M must be parallel. Next, the converse of the alternate exterior angles theorem. If two lines in a transversal form alternate exterior angles that are congruent, the two lines must be parallel. You guys getting the pattern here? So, working backwards, everything we learned yesterday, true converses. All right? And then finally, the converse of the corresponding angles theorem. So if corresponding angles are congruent and they're formed out of two lines in a transversal, if those angles, like 1 and 5, 4 and 8, 2 and 6, 3 and 7, if any of those pairs prove to be congruent, the lines must be parallel. So are we cool with all that? Again, we basically had 3 units now that are basically just going over the same kinds of material, but it turned into several different things that can easily get crossed around or confused. Big things to remember is that same side interiors, if lines are parallel, same side interiors are supplementary, and opposite way, if same side interiors are supplementary, those lines must be parallel. Same thing with alternate interiors, alternate exteriors, and corresponding. So how do we use them? Here's a little exercise for you. What can we conclude and why? If any of these cases are met, pause, think about them on your own. Answers are coming shortly. Here they come. If 1 is congruent to 2, here's what we got. All right. Well, let's ignore all of this and see that we are working with, or what we have is A. Go back on that one. Get green. What we have is line A, line B, transversal C. 1 and 2 are alternate exterior angles for that part of the diagram. Therefore, A is congruent to B by the converse of the exterior angles theorem. If 1 is congruent to 3, now we're going to ignore this part of the diagram and just look at 1 and 3 as corresponding angles, same part of that picture. Therefore, we will know by the converse of the corresponding angles theorem that C is congruent to D. Try the others on your own. 2 and 5, and 4 and 5. Prove the following theorems. Now, I know it's confusing understanding which one, but it's all wrapped up in which part of the picture you got to ignore to see the relationship. So for 2 and 5, we were going to ignore this part. Therefore, C and D are the parallel lines. B is the transversal. And for the final problem there, we're again looking at A, B, transversal D, and ignoring this part to see that those are both same side interior angles. Okay, so think about that. Pause the video, go back if you have to try and understand it. Next problem. Now, for which value of x would make C parallel to D? Pause, answer coming now. Okay, so for C to be parallel to D, these are same side interior angles, which means therefore they must add up to 180, and we can do our algebra, and if these of course add up to 180, C must be parallel to D. So x comes out to be 30. Following our steps, set up our equation. This plus this must equal 180. And then continuing on, we're going to combine like terms. Combine like terms, subtraction, division. We know x must be 30, which makes this 69. And of course, this being 111, they add up to 180. Those are the conditions needed to be met in order to make this figure have parallel lines out of C and D. Good. Next problem. For which value of x would C be parallel to D? Answer coming in a moment. Pause if you want. Here we go. For C and D, these are corresponding angles, both on the bottom left of the x. Therefore, they must be congruent. And we follow our algebra the same way. X must end up being 1.25. All right. So, I think we got it. Again, know these things. If three units all covering the same kind of stuff, but you're going to need it. So feel good with it. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll see you tomorrow.